Level 26, Gaslighting by Omission. Gaslighting by omission is a subtle yet powerful form of psychological manipulation. Unlike traditional gaslighting, which often involves outright lies or contradictions, this version operates in the shadows, through what is not said. The manipulator carefully withholds key pieces of information to control your perception of reality. It's not just silence, it's strategic silence. A common example: a partner cheats, but tells you, "I was out with friends," omitting the crucial detail of who was there. Or a boss blames you for a failed project, but conveniently leaves out the fact that they changed the scope last minute. In families, a parent may distort childhood memories by excluding their own role in past conflicts, shaping a false narrative over time. The result? You start to question your memory, your instincts, and even your sanity. This tactic gives the manipulator immense power. By curating reality, they shape how others perceive events, absolving themselves of accountability while shifting blame. It allows them to appear innocent, even honest, because technically, they didn't lie. This plausible deniability creates confusion and self-doubt in the target, keeping them compliant and dependent. Avoiding this trap requires vigilance and trust in your intuition. If something feels off, it probably is. Ask direct questions, cross-reference stories, keep records if necessary. Most importantly, don't ignore the gaps in a narrative. What's left out is just as important as what's said. Healthy relationships are built on transparency, not carefully crafted half-truths. Gaslighting by omission is a quiet erosion of truth. It doesn't need to shout. It simply whispers less and lets you fill in the blanks. And in those blanks, it rewrites reality. Level 27, Negging. Negging is a manipulative tactic often disguised as flirtation or teasing. On the surface, it sounds like a joke or a backhanded compliment, but beneath the smile is a calculated strategy to undermine your confidence just enough that you seek the manipulator's approval. Common examples include phrases like, "You're pretty for someone your age," or "You'd be really attractive if you lost a little weight." It might even take subtler forms, like comparing you to an ex or saying, "You're not like most girls, thank God." These statements are designed to sting just slightly, planting a seed of self-doubt while making the manipulator seem just out of reach, someone whose validation you suddenly crave. The user of negging gains power by lowering your self-esteem in small increments. It's a psychological push and pull. They wound you, then offer just enough approval to keep you engaged. This dynamic creates an unbalanced emotional exchange where you're constantly trying to earn their acceptance, even if you don't realize it. That need for approval becomes a hook. Negging thrives in social environments where confidence is currency. Dating scenes, friend groups, even workplaces. And because it's often masked as humor or flirtation, many victims don't recognize it until their self-image has already eroded. To avoid being manipulated by negging, listen to how someone's words make you feel, not just what they literally say. If compliments come with a sting, trust your gut. Set boundaries. Call out subtle put-downs when you hear them. Genuine connections don't require you to feel less than to stay interested. Negging isn't charm, it's control with a smile. And once you stop needing their validation, their power disappears. Level 28. Forced dependency. Forced dependency is a manipulative tactic where one person creates or exaggerates another's reliance on them, emotionally, financially, or psychologically, to maintain control. Unlike healthy support, which empowers, forced dependency limits freedom and autonomy under the guise of care. It starts subtly. A partner insists on handling all the finances so you don't have to stress. A parent discourages their adult child from moving out, citing safety or cost concerns. A friend or mentor gives constant advice but shames you when you make independent choices. In extreme cases, abusers might isolate victims from friends or job opportunities, ensuring they have nowhere else to turn. The manipulator's goal is simple: control. By making you dependent on them, they become indispensable. This creates a power imbalance where you hesitate to challenge or leave because you fear you can't function without them. The user gets obedience, admiration, and loyalty without ever earning it. What makes forced dependency so insidious is that it often looks like love, protection, or generosity. The help feels genuine at first, until it starts to suffocate. Over time, you might lose confidence in your own abilities, believing the manipulator's narrative. You need me. You'd fall apart without me. To avoid this trap, pay attention to how help is given. Real support uplifts, it doesn't restrict. Ask yourself, are your choices respected? Are you encouraged to grow independently? Do you feel free or trapped? Set boundaries, maintain your own skills, finances, and social connections. And if someone resists your independence, question why. Forced dependency is a cage built from favors, fears, and false kindness. The key to escaping it isn't just breaking free. It's remembering you were never weak to begin with. Level 29. Threat of Abandonment. The threat of abandonment is a manipulation tactic where someone uses the fear of being left, emotionally, physically, or socially, to control another person's behavior. It doesn't always come in the form of a direct threat. Often it's implied, if you really loved me, you wouldn't do that. I guess I'll just leave then. People always let me down. Don't be one of them. This tactic creates a psychological leash. By instilling the fear that any disagreement or display of independence could lead to rejection, the manipulator ensures compliance. The target becomes overly cautious, walking on eggshells, trying not to push them away. Over time, self-expression erodes. Needs are silenced. The relationship becomes less about connection and more about not being left. Common examples include a partner threatening to break up after every argument, a friend who withdraws affection unless you do what they want, or a parent who gives conditional love, saying things like, "After all I've done, you'd really leave me." The manipulator's advantage is emotional dominance. They weaponize your attachment and fear of loss to shape your actions. The threat doesn't even need to be followed through. The possibility is often enough to control. To resist this tactic, recognize emotional blackmail when it appears. Healthy relationships don't make love conditional on obedience. You should never have to sacrifice your boundaries to keep someone close. If someone threatens to leave every time they don't get their way, they aren't offering love, they're offering leverage. Establish self-worth outside the relationship. Surround yourself with people who respect your autonomy. And remember, someone who truly values you won't use abandonment as a bargaining chip. Fear of loss is powerful, but fear shouldn't be the price of keeping someone around. Level 30, Scarcity Illusion. The scarcity illusion is a psychological manipulation tactic that creates a false sense of urgency or exclusivity to influence decisions. It operates on a basic human instinct. We fear missing out. When something seems limited, whether it's time, love, attention, or opportunity, we're more likely to act impulsively, bypassing logic for emotion. Manipulators exploit this by making you believe they are rare, their affection is scarce, or your window to act is closing. A classic example: I don't usually open up like this, but I feel something special with you. Or, you're lucky I even stuck around. Most people would have left by now. In sales, it's the only 3 spots left pitch. In relationships, it's dangling commitment like a prize. If you don't change, I'll find someone who appreciates me. The goal, pressure. The scarcity illusion forces you into choices you might not make with a clear head. It shifts the power dynamic. Suddenly you're the one chasing, proving your worth, or scrambling to hold on. This tactic gives the manipulator control by making themselves, or what they offer, seem irreplaceable. You question your options, lower your standards, and cling tighter, fearing what you'll lose. To counter this, slow down. If something feels rushed or too good to be true, it probably is. Ask yourself, is this really scarce, or just presented that way? Real value doesn't require panic. Genuine people don't demand urgency to earn your trust. Ground yourself in abundance of time, love, opportunity. Know your worth outside of artificial limits. When you stop believing someone else is the prize, you stop falling for the illusion. Scarcity is often a performance, and the manipulator, just a magician, hoping you won't look behind the curtain. Level 31. Hoovering. Hoovering is a manipulation tactic used to suck someone back into a toxic relationship after they've tried to leave or establish distance. Named after the vacuum brand, it describes how manipulators suck you back in with promises, guilt, charm, or emotional bait. It's not about love, it's about control. Common examples include sudden messages after silence. I miss you so much. I can't live without you. Or guilt trips like, I've been so depressed since you left. Sometimes it's a fabricated crisis. I'm in the hospital. I thought you'd want to know. Other times, they idealize you again, saying everything you once longed to hear. You were right. I've changed. Hoovering often follows a cycle of abuse. After gaslighting, devaluing, or discarding you, the manipulator reappears just when you begin to heal. Their goal isn't reconciliation, it's reinstating control. By exploiting your empathy, nostalgia, or fear of being alone, they lure you back into the same dynamic they once made unbearable. The advantage to the user is simple: re-established access to your time, energy, and attention. Whether they feed off your emotional reactions, need a supply of validation, or simply don't want you to move on without them, hoovering ensures you stay stuck, not them. To resist hoovering, recognize it for what it is: a tactic, not a transformation. Block contact if necessary. Keep a journal to remind yourself why you left. Confide in others who can ground you in reality. And most importantly, understand that someone who truly values you won't wait until you walk away to treat you right. Hoovering is emotional sleight of hand, designed to erase your progress. Don't fall for the suction. The peace you're seeking is on the other side of silence. Level 32. Weaponized incompetence. Weaponized incompetence is a manipulation tactic where someone pretends to be bad at a task or exaggerates their lack of skill to avoid responsibility. It's not true ignorance. It's strategic incompetence, used to shift burdens onto others while maintaining the appearance of helplessness. You'll often hear it in relationships. "I just don't know how to clean like you do." Or, "You're so much better with the kids. Why don't you handle it?" In workplaces, it sounds like, "I'm terrible with spreadsheets. Can you just do it?" Over time, one person becomes overworked while the other enjoys reduced effort and zero accountability. The genius of this tactic lies in its subtlety. It looks like a lack of skill, not a power move. But the outcome is clear. The manipulator gets their way without open conflict. It's a long game of learned helplessness, where the target either does everything themselves or wastes energy trying to teach someone who has no intention of learning. The advantage for the manipulator is comfort without consequence. They avoid effort, responsibility, and blame, while still benefiting from the other person's labor. Worse, if the target complains, they seem unreasonable. After all, it's not their fault they're bad at it, right? To avoid falling victim to weaponized incompetence, set boundaries and hold people accountable. Don't reward poor performance with a free pass. Delegate tasks clearly, and if someone fails repeatedly, ask, "Is this really about ability or effort?" Recognize the difference between can't and won't. One is genuine struggle. The other is manipulation with a lazy smile. Weaponized incompetence isn't clumsiness, it's calculated. And the sooner you stop covering for it, the faster the illusion falls apart. Level 33, Normalizing Abuse. Normalizing abuse is a manipulation tactic where harmful behavior is presented as ordinary, deserved, or even loving. Over time, what should be shocking becomes familiar. What should be resisted becomes tolerated. The abuser's goal is to blur the line between love and harm until you no longer recognize the difference. It starts subtly. A partner who yells during arguments says, "That's just how I talk when I'm upset." A parent insists, "I hit you because I care." Discipline is love. Or a boss who constantly belittles their employees' claims, "This is just how it is in a fast-paced environment." Through repetition and rationalization, abuse becomes part of the landscape, something to adapt to rather than escape from. The user gains total control. By convincing the target that their behavior is normal, the abuser avoids accountability and reduces resistance. The victim stops questioning, stops setting boundaries, and starts internalizing the idea that they are overreacting or deserving of mistreatment. It erodes self-esteem and creates a cycle where the abused becomes more dependent on the abuser for validation, love, or survival. To avoid this trap, it's crucial to name things as they are. Verbal aggression isn't just passion. Isolation isn't protection. Control isn't care. Pay attention to how often you're making excuses for someone else's behavior. Ask yourself, would I accept this treatment if it happened to someone I loved? Surround yourself with perspectives outside the relationship. Friends, therapists, or support groups who can help you see clearly. Abuse thrives in silence and isolation. Truth dismantles its power. Normalizing abuse is about conditioning you to live in a cage you no longer recognize. But just because pain is familiar doesn't mean it's love. And just because it's common doesn't mean it's right. Level 34, Emotional Blackmail. Emotional blackmail is a powerful manipulation tactic where someone uses your emotions against you to control your behavior. It's not always overt threats. Instead, it's guilt, fear, and obligation dressed up as love. The manipulator says, "If you really cared about me, you'd do this," or, "After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me." The message is clear: comply or risk losing the relationship. Common examples include a partner threatening to hurt themselves if you leave, a parent guilting you for setting boundaries. "You never call anymore. I guess I'm not important to you." Or a friend saying, "I guess our friendship doesn't matter if you can't drop everything for me." These statements exploit your empathy and sense of responsibility, making you feel like you're the bad one for saying no. The user gains instant power. They don't need to use logic or compromise, just emotional pressure. The fear of causing harm, losing love, or being seen as selfish keeps you compliant. Over time, your choices stop being your own. You're not acting out of free will, but out of fear. To break free from emotional blackmail, you need to recognize the pattern, a demand, a threat, explicit or implied, and your resulting guilt. Remind yourself, you're not responsible for someone else's emotional regulation. Healthy relationships don't rely on fear-based obedience. Set boundaries and stick to them. Call out the manipulation calmly. "I care about you, but I won't be guilted into doing something I'm not comfortable with." Support systems, friends, therapists can offer perspective and validation. Emotional blackmail is not love. It's control in disguise. And the moment you stop negotiating with threats, the manipulator loses their grip. Level 35, Love Withdrawal. Love withdrawal is a manipulation tactic where affection, attention, or emotional warmth is intentionally withheld to control another person. It's not a natural cooling-off period. It's a calculated silence, a punishment designed to provoke anxiety and compliance. The manipulator uses love not as a bond, but as bait. Common examples include a partner suddenly going cold after a disagreement, refusing to talk, withholding intimacy, or acting emotionally distant until you apologize, even if you did nothing wrong. A parent might stop showing affection or given praise when a child disobeys, sending the message, "Love is earned through obedience." In friendships, it can be the cold shoulder or exclusion until you make it up to them. The goal is simple: control through emotional deprivation. The user knows that humans crave connection, and when that connection is suddenly withdrawn, it triggers panic. You begin to question yourself, apologize just to restore peace, and mold your behavior to avoid future withdrawal. Over time, you become more dependent on their approval and more afraid of losing it. Love withdrawal benefits the manipulator by creating an uneven power dynamic. They become the gatekeeper of warmth and connection, rewarding obedience and punishing resistance. It keeps the other person in a constant state of emotional uncertainty, willing to sacrifice their needs just to feel close again. To avoid falling into this trap, recognize the difference between healthy space and punitive silence. Pay attention to patterns. Does affection disappear the moment you assert yourself? Set clear boundaries. Express that withholding love is not a solution to conflict. And remember, real love is not conditional on perfection. Love shouldn't feel like a reward you have to earn. If someone uses affection as a leash, it's not love. It's manipulation in disguise. Level 36, Double Binds. A double bind is a psychological trap where no matter what choice you make, you're wrong. It's a form of manipulation that puts you in a lose-lose situation. often leaving you confused, anxious, and constantly second-guessing yourself. The core of a double bind is contradiction, two opposing demands or expectations, with punishment tied to either outcome. A classic example in relationships: "Be honest with me, I can handle it," followed by anger or withdrawal when you actually tell the truth. Or "I want you to be independent," but when you act on your own, you're accused of being selfish or distant. In families, a parent might say, "You can talk to me about anything," but respond with judgment or silence when you do. At work, it might sound like, "Take initiative," and then, "Why didn't you follow protocol?" The advantage for the manipulator is psychological dominance. By creating conflicting rules and reactions, they keep you stuck in uncertainty. You begin to doubt your instincts, your words, your actions. You feel like you can never win, which makes you more compliant, more apologetic, and easier to control. The confusion becomes the cage. To escape a double bind, you first need to name it. Ask yourself, am I being set up to fail no matter what I choose? If the answer is yes, step back emotionally. Don't try to solve a no-win scenario. Call it out. Say something like, "I'm getting mixed messages here. Can we clarify what you actually expect from me?" Healthy relationships don't require mental gymnastics. Clear communication and consistent expectations are signs of respect, not tools of control. A double bind is a manipulator's maze. The only winning move is to stop playing their game. Level 37, Selective Attention. Selective attention is a subtle manipulation tactic where someone chooses to acknowledge only certain parts of a situation, usually the ones that serve their narrative, while ignoring or dismissing everything else. It's not forgetfulness, it's deliberate focus used to distort perception and shift blame. A common example: in an argument, the manipulator fixates on your tone while ignoring the valid point you're making. Or they highlight the one time you lost your temper while disregarding months of their own mistreatment. They might constantly praise themselves for small acts of kindness, while conveniently overlooking patterns of neglect or disrespect. In workplaces, it could be a boss who nitpicks a minor error but ignores your consistent contributions. By controlling what gets attention and what doesn't, the manipulator reshapes the story. The advantage is clear. They get to be the victim, the hero, or the misunderstood party. You, meanwhile, are left defending isolated moments taken out of context. Over time, this makes you feel unstable, unseen, or like the problem in the relationship. Selective attention keeps the focus off accountability and creates a psychological fog. You begin to question your own memory, your fairness, your reactions, and in that confusion, the manipulator holds the upper hand. To protect yourself, keep track of the full picture. Don't let isolated moments define the whole dynamic. If someone repeatedly redirects conversations to minor issues while avoiding the bigger problems, that's a red flag. Stay grounded in patterns, not exceptions. Call out the imbalance. You're focusing on one moment. Let's talk about the full situation. And trust your internal record, even when someone tries to rewrite it. Selective attention isn't just misdirection, it's weaponized focus. And once you see where their spotlight lands, you can start turning on your own. Level 38, Redirection. Redirection is a manipulation tactic where someone deliberately shifts the focus of a conversation or situation to avoid accountability, criticism, or vulnerability. Instead of addressing the issue at hand, they steer attention elsewhere, often toward your flaws, a new topic, or an emotional distraction. It's not about resolution, it's about control through misdirection. A common example: you confront someone about a hurtful comment, and they respond with, "Well, what about that time you embarrassed me in front of our friends?" Or you raise concerns about their behavior, and suddenly the conversation becomes about how you're being too sensitive, too dramatic, or too difficult. In workplace settings, redirection might look like a manager ignoring feedback and shifting the blame onto team performance or past mistakes. The advantage for the manipulator is simple. They dodge responsibility while putting you on the defensive. Redirection derails conversations, confuses boundaries, and often leaves you feeling like the villain for even bringing something up. It protects the user's ego while exhausting your emotional energy. To spot redirection, listen for sharp topic changes when things get uncomfortable. If every serious discussion turns into a conversation about your faults or irrelevant issues, you're being steered off course. To defend against it, stay anchored. Calmly redirect the conversation back. We can talk about that later. Right now, I'm addressing what happened earlier. Avoid taking the bait. Don't defend yourself against unrelated accusations mid-confrontation. Instead, name the tactic when needed. It feels like you're changing the subject to avoid this conversation. Redirection works because it throws you off balance. But once you learn to keep your footing, the manipulator loses their edge. In the game of dark psychology, redirection is misdirection. Don't follow the hand. Watch the intent behind it. Level 39, Pathologizing Healthy Responses. Pathologizing healthy responses is a manipulative tactic where someone frames your normal, reasonable emotions, like anger, sadness, or boundaries, as irrational, unstable, or toxic. The goal is to discredit your reactions, so the manipulator doesn't have to take responsibility for the behavior that caused them. Common examples include calling you crazy for being upset after betrayal, labeling you too sensitive when you express hurt, or saying you're overreacting when you set a boundary. You might hear things like, "Wow, you're really emotional. Are you okay?" Or "No one else reacts like this." Even healthy self-advocacy can be twisted. You're being aggressive when you calmly assert your needs. The advantage to the manipulator is significant. By pathologizing your response, they shift attention away from their own actions and onto your reaction. It creates a dynamic where you are always the problem, regardless of what they've done. This not only invalidates your feelings, but slowly chips away at your confidence and self-trust. You begin to question your own emotional sanity, wondering if you really are too much. To protect yourself, learn to validate your own emotions. Ask, is my reaction proportionate to the situation? Would I judge a friend for responding the same way? Surround yourself with people who support emotional honesty and who don't make you feel crazy for having feelings. Call it out when necessary. I'm having a normal response to something that hurt me. Dismissing it doesn't solve anything. Therapy, journaling, and grounded outside perspectives can also help reinforce your emotional clarity. Pathologizing healthy responses isn't just gaslighting. It's a way to turn your strength into a weakness. But your ability to feel deeply, speak up, and protect your boundaries isn't a flaw. It's your power. Don't let anyone diagnose it away. Level 40. Ambiguity-Based Confusion. Ambiguity-based confusion is a manipulation tactic where a person deliberately communicates in vague, unclear, or contradictory ways to keep you off balance and uncertain. The goal is simple: confuse you just enough that you stop trusting your own judgment and start relying on them for clarity. This tactic often shows up in relationships where someone says, "I never promised anything," even after strongly implying commitment, or "You're reading too much into it," after a series of mixed signals. In professional settings, a manipulative boss might give you unclear instructions and later blame you for not following through. The message is always hazy, the boundaries blurry, and the rules constantly shifting. By staying vague, the manipulator avoids accountability. If you get upset, they can claim you misunderstood. If they're confronted, they can say, "That's not what I meant." It's a game of plausible deniability, where you're left questioning what was really said, and whether your reactions are even valid. The advantage to the user is significant. They maintain power through confusion. When nothing is ever fully defined, they can shift narratives, dodge consequences, and keep you chasing clarity that never comes. It's not just emotional fog, it's a strategy of disorientation. To avoid falling into this trap, demand specificity. Ask direct questions and insist on clear answers. Don't settle for implications or half-promises. Get things in writing if needed. And if someone consistently leaves you feeling confused or wrong-footed, trust that pattern. Consistent ambiguity isn't a communication style. It's control disguised as miscommunication. Ambiguity-based confusion works by making you doubt yourself and look to them for certainty. But clarity is a right, not a reward. You don't have to live in someone else's fog. Step out of it and see things for what they really are. Level 41. Anchoring emotional states. Anchoring emotional states is a manipulation tactic where someone deliberately links specific emotions to their presence, words, or actions, training you to feel a certain way whenever they're around. Over time, you become emotionally conditioned to respond predictably, even when logic tells you otherwise. A common example is a partner who showers you with affection only after arguments, creating a cycle where conflict becomes tied to intimacy. Or a parent who gives love and praise only when you achieve something, teaching you to associate their approval with performance. In toxic relationships, a manipulator might alternate between extreme kindness and cruelty, until just a text from them floods you with anxiety or euphoria. The manipulator gains control by becoming the emotional anchor. They dictate your highs and lows, reward your compliance with positive emotion, and punish resistance with withdrawal or negativity. Over time, you crave their approval not just out of affection, but because your emotional world has been wired to depend on it. This tactic is powerful because it bypasses rational thought. You might know the person is toxic, yet still feel drawn to them. That's the emotional anchoring at work. Like a reflex you didn't agree to. To break free, awareness is the first step. Ask yourself, how do I consistently feel around this person, and what triggers those feelings? Notice the patterns, especially emotional spikes followed by reinforcement. Begin detaching your self-worth and happiness from their approval. Reclaim control by anchoring positive emotional states to your own actions, things that bring peace, joy, and clarity without their influence. Therapy, mindfulness, and journaling can help you retrain those reflexes. Anchoring emotional states is less about affection and more about conditioning. Once you recognize the pattern, you can unhook the chain and feel on your own terms again. Level 42, Reframing Memories. Reframing memories is a manipulation tactic where someone deliberately alters your recollection of past events to serve their narrative. It's not just selective storytelling. It's psychological rewriting, designed to make you question your experiences, emotions, and even your sanity. Common examples include a partner saying, "It wasn't that bad, you're being dramatic," after a hurtful argument, or "You're remembering it wrong, I never said that," when confronted about toxic behavior. Over time, they might reframe entire periods of your relationship. "I was always there for you," when in reality they were distant or neglectful. This tactic often overlaps with gaslighting, but focuses specifically on distorting the timeline and emotional truth of shared experiences. The manipulator's goal is to regain control of the narrative. By reframing your memories, they cast themselves in a better light, turning abusers into victims, neglect into care, and betrayal into misunderstanding. This distortion gives them the upper hand in future conflicts and makes you more likely to doubt yourself, apologize unnecessarily, or forgive things that never truly changed. The danger lies in the erosion of your personal reality. When you can't trust your own memory, it becomes easier to let someone else define your truth. To avoid falling into this trap, document significant events. Write them down or talk to trusted third parties who can help ground you in the facts. If someone constantly challenges your recollection, pause and ask, why does their version always absolve them and blame me? Memory is powerful, but it's also vulnerable. Manipulators know this and exploit it to rewrite the story in their favor. But your truth is not up for revision. Reclaim it, protect it, and don't let someone else hold the pen. Level 43, Pattern Interrupt. Pattern interrupt is a manipulation tactic where someone deliberately breaks an expected behavior or communication rhythm to destabilize you, gain control, or shift the emotional dynamic. It's often sudden, confusing, and emotionally jarring, used not to resolve conflict, but to bypass your critical thinking and reset the balance of power. A common example is a person who escalates a calm conversation into a sudden outburst of rage, tears, or silence, leaving you stunned and unsure how to respond. Or someone who, after treating you coldly for days, suddenly showers you with affection and kindness, making you question whether there was even a problem to begin with. In dating or sales, it might be a strange compliment, an inappropriate joke, or a sudden change of tone that throws you off just long enough for the manipulator to steer the interaction their way. The advantage for the manipulator is immediate. Pattern interrupts bypass your mental filters. When your expectations are shattered, you enter a state of cognitive dissonance. Your focus shifts from holding boundaries to making sense of the confusion. That pause, brief but potent, is the moment they use to regain control, push an agenda, or disarm your resistance. To protect yourself, learn to recognize the tactic. If you find yourself feeling dazed, shocked, or thrown off in a conversation, pause. Ask yourself, was that response appropriate to the situation? Or was it a sudden shift meant to derail me? Ground yourself in your original point and don't be pressured into reacting emotionally. Not every disruption is manipulation, but when inconsistency is weaponized, it's a tool of control. Pattern interrupt is the art of psychological sleight of hand. And once you stop reacting to the shock, the spell breaks, and so does their influence. Level 44. Hypnotic Suggestion. Hypnotic suggestion is a covert manipulation tactics where language is used in subtle, repetitive, or emotionally charged ways to influence thoughts and behavior, often without the target realizing they've been guided. It doesn't require formal hypnosis. It operates in everyday conversation through carefully crafted words that bypass critical thinking and plant ideas directly into the subconscious. Common examples include phrases like, "You probably already agree with me on this," or "Most people who are smart get what I'm saying." These statements prime your brain to comply by aligning agreement with intelligence or belonging. In romantic manipulation, it might sound like, "You've never felt this kind of connection before, have you?" A suggestion wrapped as a question, making you feel unique or special for agreeing. Repetition, rhythm, and emotionally loaded words are also tools of hypnotic suggestion. A manipulator may repeat certain ideas, "You can trust me," or "You always overthink things," until they become internalized truths. Over time, your brain absorbs these cues, lowering resistance and increasing compliance. The user gains subtle but powerful control. Unlike overt persuasion or threats, hypnotic suggestion flies under the radar. It influences without triggering defenses, making it one of the most insidious tools in the manipulator's arsenal. To defend against it, cultivate mindful awareness in conversations. Notice when you're being led, rather than deciding freely. Question why certain ideas feel so agreeable or familiar. Slow down your responses. Manipulators thrive on automatic reactions. If something feels too convincing, take a step back and ask yourself, whose voice is this, really? Hypnotic suggestion is persuasion cloaked in comfort and rhythm. But when you stay conscious of the words shaping your mind, you reclaim the right to decide what gets in and what doesn't. Level 45. Embedded Commands. Embedded commands are subtle, psychologically charged phrases hidden within normal speech, designed to influence behavior without triggering resistance. They slip past your conscious awareness and speak directly to the subconscious, making you more likely to act without realizing you've been guided. Unlike direct orders, embedded commands are disguised within longer sentences or questions. For example, you might start to realize how much this makes sense. Or, while you're thinking about it, you can feel more comfortable saying yes. The real command, realize this makes sense, or feel more comfortable saying yes, is embedded in a seemingly casual remark. It feels natural, not forced. In relationships, a manipulator might say, "When you decide to trust me again, things will feel right." Here, the embedded command is, "Decide to trust me again," masked as a prediction or hopeful statement. In sales or negotiations, phrases like, "You'll love how this makes you feel," or "Imagine how good it'll be to sign today," subtly push you toward a specific outcome. The user gains quiet but potent control. Embedded commands avoid confrontation, disarm skepticism, and make the target feel like the decision was their own. The manipulation doesn't feel like a pressure. It feels like a thought you arrived at naturally. To avoid being influenced by embedded commands, practice listening beneath the surface. Ask, what is this person actually suggesting I do? Be wary of overly polished language, especially when it steers your decisions or emotions in one direction. If you feel nudged but can't explain why, pause. Embedded commands are invisible levers, but once you spot the mechanism, the pull loses its power. Awareness is your defense, because the moment you hear the command before you act, it's no longer subconscious, it's a choice. Level 46, False Attribution. False attribution is a manipulation tactic where someone assigns blame, intent, or emotion to another person, regardless of whether it's accurate. The goal is to distort perception and shift accountability, creating a narrative where the manipulator appears justified and the target is left feeling confused, defensive, or guilty. Common examples include statements like, "You're only mad because you're insecure," or "You clearly don't care about me. You never ask how I'm doing." In arguments, manipulators might say things like, "You're trying to ruin this relationship," or "You just want attention," when the target is simply setting a boundary or expressing concern. In workplaces, it can sound like, "They're being difficult because they don't like me," turning a legitimate critique into a personal attack. The advantage for the manipulator is control over the emotional narrative. By falsely attributing motives or emotions to others, they deflect from their own behavior and put the target on the defensive. Now, instead of discussing the real issue, you're busy trying to prove your innocence, clarify your feelings, or justify your intentions. Over time, this tactic erodes self-trust. You may begin to question your own motives or feelings, wondering if you really are selfish, unkind, or manipulative. This makes it easier for the abuser to define reality, and harder for you to push back. To avoid falling into this trap, notice when someone is telling you why you feel something, what you meant, or who you are, instead of asking. A healthy person seeks understanding, not control. Respond by reclaiming your reality. "That's not how I feel, and I won't let you define my intentions." False attribution thrives on silence and confusion. Clarity, self-awareness, and calm boundaries are the antidotes to this subtle form of psychological warfare. Level 47, Repetition Priming. Repetition priming is a psychological manipulation technique where repeated exposure to a phrase, idea, or belief makes it feel more true, acceptable, or trustworthy, regardless of its actual validity. The more you hear something, the more familiar it becomes, and the brain often mistakes familiarity for truth. Manipulators use this to plant and reinforce ideas without outright forcing them. For example, a toxic partner might say things like, "You always overreact," or "No one else would put up with you," over and over until you begin to believe it. In workplaces, a controlling boss might repeat, "You're lucky to have this job," subtly conditioning you to feel indebted and hesitant to leave. Politicians and influencers use repetition priming constantly. Slogans, catchphrases, and carefully repeated messages that bypass critical thinking and burrow into public belief. The advantage for the user is that they don't need evidence or logic, they just need time. Through constant repetition, they shape your perceptions, rewrite your internal narrative, and make you more susceptible to their influence. It's slow, almost invisible, yet deeply effective. To avoid falling victim to repetition priming, stay vigilant about the ideas you hear most often. Ask yourself, is this true or just familiar? Look for the pattern. If a phrase keeps resurfacing in the same emotional context, it's likely a tool, not a truth. Challenge repeated messages. especially those that damage your self-worth or limit your choices. Break the cycle by surrounding yourself with new perspectives and voices that affirm your reality instead of reshaping it. Repetition priming is the art of persuasion through echo, and the longer it goes unchecked, the louder the lie becomes. The defense: critical thinking, conscious awareness, and the courage to question what feels too familiar. Level 48. Linguistic Ambiguity. Linguistic ambiguity is a dark manipulation tactic where vague, layered, or double-meaning language is used to mislead, confuse, or create plausible deniability. It allows the manipulator to say something without really saying it, making it easy to twist, retract, or reinterpret later depending on how things unfold. Common examples include statements like, "I never said I'd be exclusive," when they heavily implied commitment, or "I didn't lie, I just didn't say everything," skirting truth through omission. In conflict, someone might say, "Maybe you're just not seeing the full picture," which subtly discredits your perception without making a direct accusation. Even compliments can be loaded. "You actually look nice today," implies that you usually don't, without stating it outright. The power of linguistic ambiguity lies in its slipperiness. If you confront the speaker, they can easily say, "That's not what I meant," or "You're reading too much into it." This keeps you uncertain, defensive, and less likely to challenge them again. It also creates confusion. What was real? What was implied? What was intended? For the manipulator, the advantage is control without commitment. They can shift meanings to suit the moment, avoid accountability, and plant seeds of self-doubt, all while maintaining an innocent front. To protect yourself, pay close attention to clarity. If a message feels vague or loaded, ask direct questions. "What exactly do you mean by that?" Don't settle for implications. Seek specifics. Document important conversations, especially when manipulation is a pattern. Linguistic ambiguity is verbal smoke and mirrors, a way to say just enough to influence you, but not enough to be held accountable. Your best defense is clear thinking, clear boundaries, and refusing to accept blurry truths from those who benefit from the confusion. Level 49. Sleight of mouth. Sleight of mouth is a manipulation tactic that uses clever, quick, and often deceptive language patterns to deflect, reframe, or redirect a conversation, usually to avoid accountability or to subtly dominate a dialogue. Borrowed from the concept of sleight of hand in magic, it's all about distraction and control, not truth or clarity. A manipulator skilled in sleight of mouth might respond to a direct concern like, "You hurt me when you said that," with a twist such as, "It's interesting how you always make yourself the victim," instantly shifting the blame. Or if you say, "I feel like you don't listen to me," they might reply, "Why do you assume I don't care just because I don't agree?" reframing the argument and putting you on the defensive. Other examples include using vague analogies, false equivalencies. "Everyone makes mistakes, even you." Or philosophical diversions. "What is truth, anyway?" to derail meaningful confrontation. The result? You end up arguing about the argument, not the issue, lost in a maze of language. The manipulator gains the upper hand by seizing control of the narrative. Instead of defending their actions, they force you to defend your words, logic, or emotions. It's a smokescreen tactic, intellectually engaging, emotionally draining. To defend against sleight of mouth, Stay grounded in your original point. Don't get baited into side conversations or rhetorical rabbit holes. When a response feels like verbal judo, pause and say, "You're changing the topic. Let's get back to what I said." Simplicity is your shield. Stick to facts. Repeat your concern. Don't fight cleverness with cleverness. Respond with clarity. Sleight of mouth is verbal manipulation dressed as insight. But once you spot the trick, the magic fades, and real dialogue can begin. Level 50, False Consensus Effect. The false consensus effect is a psychological manipulation tactic where someone presents their opinions, beliefs, or behaviors as if they are universally accepted, creating the illusion that everyone agrees with them. This pressures others to conform, even if they privately disagree, because no one wants to be the outsider or the difficult one. Common examples include statements like, "Everyone thinks you're overreacting," or "Most people in your position would have handled it better." In group settings, manipulators may say, "We all agree this was your fault," even when no actual consensus exists. Online it appears in the form of mob mentality, when a few loud voices claim to represent the majority, silencing opposing views through sheer volume and certainty. The user of this tactic gains a strategic advantage. By pretending their stance is the default or socially approved one, they discredit dissent before it even happens. It isolates the target, making them question their own judgment and discouraging them from pushing back. After all, who wants to go against everyone? To resist this manipulation, question sweeping generalizations. When someone says everyone agrees, ask, who exactly is everyone? Push for specifics. If you feel isolated, seek out independent perspectives, people outside the manipulator's influence who can offer honest feedback. Trust your gut. Disagreement doesn't make you wrong, and consensus doesn't always mean truth. Just because a voice is loud or repeated often doesn't mean it reflects reality. Manipulators exploit social pressure because it's powerful, but only if you let it go unchallenged. The false consensus effect isn't about facts. It's about control through perceived belonging. But clarity and critical thinking cut through the illusion. You don't need to agree with the crowd to be right. You just need to stay grounded in what you know to be true.